What is the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life that you can't explain? Living in kind of a beat-up neighborhood in the early 2000s. My house had an alleyway behind it, and one night around 3 a.m. I heard the weirdest sound, like laughing, but also moaning. I looked out my window, and saw the elderly man standing under a street lamp just staring up at my window. It freaked me the fuck out. He finally kept walking down the alleyway, but man, I never looked out that window at night again. As a kid there was a camp that had a lean-to and an old plywood caravan against it a long way out in the O's bush from the town I grew up in. One school holidays my friends and I went for a bushwalk and stumbled across it. Didn't look like anyone had been there in months, and we looked in the van, nothing much, but moldy seats and a built-in table, usual old caravan stuff, so we shut the door because it smelt moldy. As we sat in the shade of the lean-to we heard the doorknob squeak and start turning. Pretty sure my backpack is still sitting there 35 years later because I dropped it and ran. We all scattered in different directions and met up lower down the road an hour later, and we were all still pale. No way anyone was in that van. No way. Still bothers me to this day. Around 3, I was walking home from work in the afternoon and just happened to look up on an overcast day. Parallel to my direction a meteor burned up, led by a bright burning and leaving black smoke across the whole sky. It made a low-pitched loud rumbling across the whole sky for the 3 seconds it took to travel that far. Before YouTube no one would have believed me, much less heard of anyone who saw it. In hindsight it was wicked cool to see. At the time, I thought I was going to die. I had seen meteor showers. I had never seen one that low, or with any volume. I used to go night running pretty late, 11 p.m. 1 a.m. up a valley near my house. At one point the road I run on goes through an area with cemeteries on both sides and an abandoned Japanese Shinto temple nearby. One night during a run while I was running between the cemeteries, I saw an old Asian lady standing by a bus stop. She said hi in a very slow and deliberate manner and waved at me. I nodded and smiled at her and kept jogging. My turnaround point was about 5 minutes past the bus stop, but when I turned around and ran back the way I came the woman was gone. No cars or buses had driven past me in either direction, and I didn't see her walking anywhere. She was there when I ran up the road, and she was gone 5 minutes later when I ran down the road. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but later I realized the whole situation seemed very strange. Why was she there so late at night? Where did she go? I still get a chill up my spine remembering the odd way she said hi and waved at me. Needless to say, I changed my running route shortly after that. Not so scary but unexplainable. At my stepmom's funeral, she was played off with the song "I'll Fly Away" from my personal CD of the Oh Brother SDTK. On the way home, I got the disc out to play it, and the disc was broken neatly in half, in a case. My grandfather had just died a few days earlier, and my mom was crying one night in our kitchen. I started hugging her. We had a lot of my grandfather's belongings, but there was this broken radio that didn't even have working batteries in it on the table, along with other things like photos and clothes he previously owned. This is the only unexplainable thing I've ever experienced, but while my mom was bawling crying, the radio made a very loud static noise for about a second. We both stared in silence at it. It was eerie. She stopped crying because even she heard it. We both just went to bed after that and haven't spoke of it since. I'd imagine if it was something paranormal it was my grandfather letting us know he's here, but who knows. When I was about 24 or 25, I stopped off at a CVS relatively late at night. On my way inside the store, the parking lot was pretty much empty. But when I came back out, a strange-looking woman was standing in the parking lot. She had this creepy weird grin on her face, and black eyes. I don't mean bruising around her eyes. Rather, it looked like her eyeballs were made of pure onyx. She just didn't seem human in a way. She stood near my car, watched me get inside, start the engine, etc. She didn't speak to me or try to come closer or anything. She just stared with that freaking weird grin and those black eyeballs. If it had been remotely close to Halloween at the time, then maybe I could found a way to dismiss it. But it happened May or June of that year, so I have no idea what was going on. Edit I photoshopped an example of how I remember her eyes looking. https://i.imgur.com 6vq38r.png https://i.imgur.com 6vq38r.png. I live in the countryside, and when I was a kid, every day I used to go check the chickens that we had in a henhouse in the garden. It was around 8 p.m. in the winter, dark, and snow everywhere. I put my shoes on and went outside. Everything went as usual. Until I saw it. There was somebody standing in front of me in the dark. Or like I wish, it was somebody. That figure was almost 3 meters tall and had red glowing eyes. I told my parents, and until this day nobody believes me. Few years ago I found out the previous owner of our house committed suicide in the same place in our garden years before we moved in. I might have something for this. When I was young, probably around 10 or so, maybe younger, I was at a family wedding. It was late in the evening, so a full moon was out and it was getting darker. Me and my cousin, who's a year younger, were swinging on this big metal gate thing outside the venue. It was on the entrance to a very, very big field. We noticed a guy very far into the field who was just glowing and radiating white. I mean, his skin, clothes, everything. I remember us standing there like WTF. Then we tried to get his attention and shout at him. He stopped, looked in our direction, but he stopped right under the full moon and pointed up towards the moon while staring at us. We were just in shock and confusion pretty much. After about 10 seconds of pointing, he carried on walking across the field and just disappeared behind a swing set. Even till this day I have no idea what that was. I'm hoping it was some costume or something, but sure didn't look like it. When I was about 7-8, I had a rope swing in my backyard. I was obsessed with it and would play on it for hours. One day, just like any other, I was swinging on it, and out the corner of my eye I spotted an animal. At first I thought it was a squirrel, but as I turned to look at it, it was much bigger and darker than a squirrel, so I figured it was a stray cat. But as I watched it walk across the yard, it wasn't a cat. It was something I had never seen before. It was all black, had the head of a badger but the body of a squirrel. It was about 2 feet in length and the height of a small dog. I got a little spooked cause I figured it was a rabid animal, so I got off the swing and backed away. That's when, in all seriousness, I watched this mystery animal run towards the fence and run right through it. Leaving no hole or damage to the fence, it just phased right through. I sat in awe for a good 3 minutes before I slowly walked inside. I was riding my bike down a rural road when I was 9 and found a garbage bag filled with red sludge and white sticks. I thought it was blood and bones, but I had a very PG childhood and I had never even seen pretend blood and bones, so I had nothing to compare to. I told myself it was what I thought it was. After all, why would there be a ripped open garbage bag filled with blood and bones? 2 days later I thought, look again, and if it is what you think it is, tell a grown-up. I biked back to the area and it was gone. I am now old and have watched enough to confirm it was blood and bones. It was Easter morning and I was in elementary school at the time. After our Easter egg hunt, I found one of my toy hairbrushes that I used on my dolls. It was completely flattened and had thick, yellow hair stuck in all the bristles as if an animal of some sort used it. This definitely wasn't human hair, and even if it was, everyone in my family had brown hair. We had no pets, and my parents didn't believe it was my toy brush when I showed them. We were all genuinely shocked. It was found in our living room on Easter morning, and to this day, my parents deny having anything to do with it. So yes, I'm 30 years old and low-key think the Easter Bunny is real. That being said, I won't put it to chance when I have kids. He'll still buy them Easter eggs in case he's not real, haha. Once I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I could see the outline of someone standing there, but when I turned on the light, there was no one there. The door was still slowly closing, as if whoever or whatever had been there was leaving. Even creepier, my Nest fire alarm had illuminated in the corridor, sensing movement, but there was nobody there. Still gives me chills thinking about it. Not sure if it counts, but when I was a kid, my stepdad was drunk and high and thought that one of his friends had both ripped him off and was hitting on my mom behind his back. I don't know how true any of that might actually be, but he grabbed a wooden oar and chased him out of the house and down the street. The thing is, I never saw that guy again, and we lived in a small town. I hope he just left, but I don't know for sure either way. My friend and I were driving from a gig we played in Kona on the big island of Hawaii. We were driving on Saddle Road, one of 2 roads from Kona to the other side of the island to Hilo Town. Saddle Road is known for being a spiritual place and lots of weird things there. This stretch of land is about 40 kilo with no lights or population. Just lava rock. We drove over the road about 1 a.m. We were talking stories and having a good time. Then we saw on the side of the road a huge white dog wearing a gold chain staring at us. We passed and asked if we saw the same thing. We were debating about stopping on the side of the road to pick it up. The local legend is that if you see an old lady on the road you need to pick her up or something bad will happen. We didn't stop and didn't speak until we got home. I asked another local guy what could that have been. He said it was the goddess Peel's pet. Did some research. Looks like this dog has been seen sporadically since the 1950s. Once I saw a man and dog coming up my drive. So I closed the door and ran to the kitchen, and this black figure was standing there. Usually you can see colors of the clothes through the frosted glass, but this was an all-black silhouette, not moving. I turned my head for a second, and when I looked back it was gone. It was really strange. It wasn't what I saw but what I heard. I lived down the street from our town cemetery. Me and my buddies would walk around on the paths in the cemetery. Every now and then I'd see a car in the cemetery when walking, but it was more or less always empty. One day, my 3 friends and I were walking up a small hill in the cemetery, and we all heard a knocking sound exactly like someone knocking on a door. It was just one loud knock 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 feet away from us and then nothing. I looked at my friends and we all asked if the other made that sound. None of us did and couldn't have. We were in the middle of a road, and the closest tree grave was 15-20 ft away. We looked around at the houses, and no one was outside that could make the noise. It was creepy and I have no idea how the sound was created. Giant blue, almond-shaped, front-facing eyes glowing in the dark through a barbed wire fence. I lived on a forest property in a country with no large predatory animals. This was after huge bush fires, so something that lived in the forest must have been flushed to the outskirts where we lived. Even the insects had gone dead silent in flight. Fight or freeze instinct was overwhelming. Local indigenous tribe claim I encountered a bunyip. I have no idea what it was, but I've never been so terrified. It's not scary but unexplainable. When I was 10 I got into a motorcycle accident. I wasn't driving it, I was walking from school when a motorcycle hit me going full speed. I did see the motorcycle come, but I froze up and couldn't move. When it had hit me I flew pretty far and remember someone catching me when I fell down. When I got up and looked around, I didn't see anyone, and witnesses told the cops I flew at least 6 feet and fell head first on the ground. My head was fine, just had a broken collarbone. Thankfully my parents believed me when I told them. Brought home a 3-foot-tall realistic doll my grandparents had, with the intention of fixing it up. I'm scared of dolls, so I put it in a box and put a heavy metal box on top of it. Next morning the doll was gone. The boxes were still in place, but the damn thing had disappeared completely. I live in fear.